That's right. That's yes. Yeah. Welcome back, Nathan, and it's nice to see Michael, Gershon, Liz, Flores, Professor Lachter, Fran. I'm sure people is going to join us soon. We are at the end of chapter 4, and the chapter 5 is different because it's about numbers, and the chapter 6 is an addendum. So actually, this is the end of these 4 chapters of an anthology of rabbi sayings, ethical things. And Pirkei Avot, we say, is different from all of the rest of the Mishnah, because all of the 62 tractates of the Mishnah, or 37 tractates in the Talmud, they all are about halacha, about the law, what you're supposed to do. But here is more like a meta halacha. This is like the guide in ethics of why we do the halacha, why we behave the way we behave. So I try to, even if it's literature, and we have to admit this is another history book, we cannot learn history from this book, but we try to put it in historical context, all 4 chapters. And we say that the first chapter was from Moses to Hillel, how we transmit Judaism, and then from Hillel to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is the dynasty. It's a biological dynasty, and also the dynasty of leadership. And then we see in chapter 2 how the Judaism, the teachers of Judaism, the rabbis, were not necessarily from father to son, but from teacher to student. And that was the main dispute, that the Kohanim, the priest, has to be a son of a Kohen priest. But a rabbi doesn't have to be a son of a rabbi. If you study, I mean, you can be the greatest rabbi. And that's why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is more or less the year 70 when the temple was destroyed, and Yavne, how we continue Judaism without sacrifices in the temple. Chapter 3, we saw Rabbi Akiva and the importance of the study of the Torah. And in chapter 4, which we concluded today, we saw about the generation in between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, between the year 135 and the year 200, which the main figure was Rabbi Meir, which is one of the teachers of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. The latest Mishnayot, we saw a lot of teachers or colleagues of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So we are more or less getting close to the year 200 when Rabbi Yehuda Nasi finally make a compilation of all of these sayings together. And I'm not going to talk about everything. There is the Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda says one who learns Torah from youngster, who is comparable to one who eats unripe grapes and drinks wine from the press, and one who learns Torah from the old, who is comparable to one who eats ripened grapes and drink aged wine. And to this saying of Rabbi Yehuda from the Kfar Bavli, there is a comment from maybe Rabbi Meir and maybe Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Maybe it's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi saying it, but Rabbi Yehuda Nasi learned this from Rabbi Meir. There is many different editions of the Mishnah, and some of them say that it's saying by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and some from Rabbi Meir. And what is the saying? Al tistakel bakankan ela b'ma sheyesh bo. Look not at the vessel, but at what it contains. And we know this is very famous, we use it a lot. And the continuation is, יש כאן חדש מלא ישן, וישן שאפילו חדש אין בו. There are new vessels that are filled with old wine, and old vessels that do not contain new wine. By the way, there is another tractate, Avot the Rabbi Natan, which is much more crude the way that they put the thing here. But I'm going to talk a little bit about this one. Look not at the vessel, but what has inside. So the reference was that previously Rabbi Yossi said that you should not study from young people, from all people. And here they say, no, it's not, doesn't matter if it's old or if he's young or how he looks. The important thing is what is the content, what it says. It can be somebody young that is very bright and very smart, and you can learn from him. It can be somebody that is old and never learn anything, so there's not much to study from him. That the age doesn't define the content. I want to say a little bit about the risk of this and how affect us as modern Jews. The idea is that we live in a world that the vessel is very much important. If somebody come with a suit and a tie and a nice podium and talk, it's different than if somebody come, with the hair like this and then kind of hippie and I don't know what is saying. It makes a different impression of us. If somebody dressed for me, why that makes an impact on us? For two things. First, because in modernity there is a lot of commercials. There's a lot of ways to attract you to buy a product. But even more deep, if we go to the Jewish philosophy, in the 19th century, in the second of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, there is three main Jewish philosophers that they are very, very important to shape our Judaism today. One of them is Hermann Cohen. The second one is Franz Rosenzweig, and the third one is Martin Buber. Now, these three guys are very, very important. They wrote a lot of books, and they are the main leaders of the existentialism in Judaism. And basically what they say is that there is three layers. The first one is aesthetics. The second floor will be ethics. And the third one is religion. You cannot be a religious person for them if you don't have the ethics. And the ethics come after the aesthetics. I'm going to try to translate. If I go to pray to a synagogue and I sit down next to somebody that didn't take a shower for 3 weeks, it's very hard for me to pray. Why? Because the aesthetics, this is the minimum. The minimum is that I say, oh, good morning, hello, how are you? To be polite. That's the aesthetics. That's the first stage. The second one is, how you doing? Are you okay? I have a problem. That will be more the ethics. Religious will be even more. It's like, I'm going now to the Shiva. I'm going now to visit the sick. That will be the third stage. So aesthetics is important for our fun. We are mostly Jews after Kant. We believe in the freedom of choice. Judaism was different before before Kantian philosophy. And what's different between the impact of Hermann Cohen. Hermann Cohen is to try to put um, some sense in religions and common sense in religion. Martin Buber is the dialogue in Judaism. All of these things make a great impact on the modern Jew. So to say that aesthetic is not relevant at all is not true. People go to a synagogue and they want the synagogue to be clean and to be nice and to have some Jewish symbols and to be, even that they go to pray, and the prayer is the most important thing. The place has to be made. You can go to a restaurant, they have very good food, but if they have all kinds of insects flying around, it's not the same. Now, if the restaurant is all clean and very well thing, and the waiter come and is very polite and this, so it makes the whole experience a little bit different. So here what we have is saying it doesn't matter if there's insect in the restaurant or not. The important thing is if the food is tasty or not. It's very hard for us, and I inclined to say that it's true that the most important thing is the content, but the vessel is important too. Not to look at all at the vessel. It will be very challenging to us. Now, in what respect I think they do have a point is that if you only look at the aesthetics, if you only look at the vessel, and you don't look at the content, you're going to be a very superficial Jew. You're not going to be. You never will reach to be an ethical Jew or a religious Jew. In order to be an ethical Jew and a religious Jew, you have to try to look behind the vessel. And I'm not saying the vessel is not important, but the vessel is not the only thing that is important. Yeah, you have this perfume, and it's look very nice now with the bottle and thing, but inside you have to smell this. What is in the video? It cannot be only the outside or the presenter. It has to be something also with the smell, and also that you use it. Sometimes you can have this nice bottle of perfume to look at it, or you can smell it, or you can even use it. The idea is that you use it, and not only that you look at the bottle or that you rely to the presenter. So I think that the core of what Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Nasi, I don't know who, I will say that Rabbi Nasi is the one saying this because it's more compatible to all of the rest of the sayings that he say. I think has a message that we many times buy products by who is the presenter and how they look, and we don't check what is the content. And it has to be something more complete, more, and to put an emphasis on the content, and mainly in the use. If we need it at all, we can buy things that we don't need at all. The religious part is also important. It's aesthetics, is the ethics, but also the religious part. You can go to a synagogue and everybody looks very nice and everybody is polite, and you can say the words, but the question is you're doing with kavanah or without kavanah. If you really go to pray, I mean, you can go there to talk to friends, it's fine too. But the idea is that you also pray there. Okay, with this I finish my part. I'm going to pass the microphone. I use my 15 minutes, I think. You're unmuted.
Okay, unmuted, and then sharing.
Myself.
Great. Okay, well, good to see you all. And I'm going to embarrass Liz by saying Mazel Tov on your award for activism and for good things that you're doing, particularly in the framework of what Edgar was just saying, that religion is this form of activism of going out and sharing your passion and good things with other people. So that's really nice. Um, just a little bit about this Elisha, the son of Avuya. Avuya is a special character. He's a third generation Tanite, and he became a heretic, a non-believer in God and the Torah. His life was dedicated to Torah by his father when he was born, and yet he decided that he couldn't believe. He's one of the four that entered the Paldeis. We talked about that, and only Akiva coming out okay. And it has something to do with their studying Kabbalah together. One went crazy, one died, one became a heretic, and Akiva came out fine. And there are some stories about why he became a heretic. One version is that he saw someone, it's in the Yerushalmi Talmud that says once he was studying, when he saw someone climb up a tree and take baby birds while sending away the mother in fulfillment of the biblical precept that's in Deuteronomy and Kittitzeh. When the person came back down, he was bitten by a snake and died. And so Elisha said, the Torah promises a good and long life for fulfilling the mitzvah. Where is the goodness he deserves? Where is the good life? Another version says he saw the tongue of Rabbi Yehuda Hanachtom, one of those who was martyred by the Romans, in the mouth of a dog and oozing blood. And he said, Zu Torah, zu schara. This is the Torah and this is the reward. He concluded that there is really no reward in punishment, no afterlife, no resurrection, and decided he's not sticking to Torah anymore. And from that point on, he's described in Talmud always as Achel. They change his name to the other one and don't use his name anymore. But nonetheless, his student, his best student, Rabbi Meir, continued to learn from him. The Talmud says that Rabbi Meir found a fruit, he ate the inside and discarded its peel, meaning that Rabbi Meir was great enough to absorb his former mentor's Torah without being influenced to follow his path and become a heretic. And maybe at the very end of his life, as Elisha weeps as he leaves the world with joy in his heart, Rabbi Meir felt that maybe the teacher left the world as a penitent, as doing tshuva just before he died. So let's see what Rabbi Elisha, son of Avuya, said here. He says, one who learns Torah in his childhood, what is he compared to? To ink on fresh paper. And one who learns Torah in the old age, what is he compared to ink on erased paper? And two ways of reading this. I didn't put the whole Hebrew into it, but it's Halomed Yeled Lemau Domeh. And Halomed Yeled is both one who's teaching a child that the child is receptive because he's young, his mind is fresh, and he's receptive. And the metaphor of paper indicates that the recipient, rather than the teacher, would seem to bear this out. But others have seen this as Halomed Yeled more as the one who learns as a child, but rather the one who teaches a child is like one who is on fresh paper. So this is one thing about who we study from and when we study in life. And Rabbi Yosef goes on and say, if you learn Torah from youngsters, that's like eating unripe grapes. And from old, that's like eating ripened grapes and drinks aged wine, which of course is much better. But Rabbi Meir turned this around and said, well, but don't look at the vessel. Don't look at the age of the person who's teaching you. Look at the content. And there are new vessels filled with old wine and old vessels that don't contain even new wine. So look at the content and not who's bringing it to you. But I think it's different when we have a very young teacher or a very old teacher. And from from being a part of the illustrious third part of life rather than the first or second thirds of life, I think that we have, all of us here, a different perspective and a different outlook on life that we'll see how you feel about those. So then we have the piece from and we'll talk about that. Elazar HaKapor says, envy, lust, and honor drive a person from the world. And you may think of other things that drive a person from the world. This Elazar HaKapar is mentioned only once in the Mishnah, ever. He lived in Lod, we know where that is now, and he considered peace to be the key to all blessing, and explained that's why in the Amida prayer, the last prayer is the prayer for peace as being the most important. In terms of jealousy, he says, well, if you are jealous of your friend's position or power, then that's not so good. But jealousy, of course, can be a positive life force if you're envious of the righteous and strive to emulate them. So again, there's a balance. And kin'at sofrim talbeh chokhmah is a common saying in modern Hebrew, which means rivalry between scholars increases wisdom. In his eyes, wealth goes beyond that, and we had King Solomon when we did Mishle, who said, "V'rakav atzamot kin'ah," envy is the decay of bones. Envy goes to the inner part of a person and causes corrosion. In terms of lust, the lust for money or physical pleasures can be debilitating as well. Obviously, there has to be some things about it, but Talmud says about lust, mar'iv sova masbiorav, starve it, and it is satisfied, satisfy it, and it is starved. And one of the things about Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was a man of fantastic wealth, is that before he died, he testified that he had not derived the slightest bit of personal pleasure from the world. And there are all sorts of examples of various lusts, such as Adam and Eve's lust for the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. And then the last, kavod, meaning honor or glory, and the love of honor or glory is a bad trait, of course. And forcing other people to honor you is kind of a low form of this spiritual malady. Honor is only legitimate when you accept it from other people to enhance respect for what you did. Like if you did something really fine, like organized a group to knit tzitziot or kippot, and you got other people to do that, and you were honored for it, or got other people to volunteer for something. So that's a respectable way to receive an honor for having done that. And then we have this kind of long, unusually long one, where he would say, those people who are born will die, and the dead will live. We may or may not agree to that. The living will be judged to learn, to teach, and to comprehend that he is God. He is the former, the creator, the comprehender, the judge, the witness, the plaintiff, and he will judge. Blessed is he, for before him there is no wrong, forgetting, favoritism, or taking of bribes, and everything is according to the reckoning. So let your heart convince you that let not your heart convince you that the grave is your escape, because just as we were formed against our will, we were born not according to our will. No one here chose to be born. And against our will we live. That is, we don't have much of a choice, but that we continue to live. And against our will, for most people, dying not because we wish we would. And against our will, we're destined to give a judgment and accounting to the king. So he's saying, well, you don't really choose whether you're going to be judged or not, just like you didn't choose whether you're going to be born or not. But there are things that we can do to try and make a difference as to how we will be judged after we're not here. And those are things that we do have some control over. So to summarize my summary of these three Mishnayot, that the best time for studying is now, any time in life. Start as soon as you can, as young as we can, to be able to retain what we're learning and to be able to apply what we're learning in a useful way. And then each of us can we say like to study from someone much younger or your old age or your own age or someone who's older. I remember a saying which said a couple, an individual, should find a doctor their own age and grow older with them. So I think there's a point to trying to find someone who understands you and understands the stage of life you're at. It's a little hard if you meet a 22-year-old doctor who may be really sharp, but very far from really empathizing or feeling what you feel like if you're in your 60s or 70s or even more. And it's important to recognize that while we don't choose to be born or live or die or to be judged, these happen. And even if you don't think you're being judged at some pearly gates up in the sky somewhere, you're being judged by those people who describe us after we're no longer alive. And they're saying, you know, she was terrific. He was a good guy, or maybe judging in a less favorable way. So we do have some control over that. And I think it's good to use that control. There's a concept now that many politicians are engineering consciousness or making sure of how they're thought of. But I think through our actions, we are seen as what we leave behind, and the impressions of our lives are what gets left behind. So that's one summary, and I'm just going to say very briefly because it was a big celebration yesterday. I finished Masechet Nizikin is a very big part of Talmud, which has been split into three parts, and Baba Batra was the last part. And basically, a lot of Talmud, interestingly, deals with subjects that really don't appear directly in the Torah. And so you have to kind of figure out what you're going to do. And it's all about, this last part has been all about contracts, tort law, financial matters, who can guarantee a loan from another, and so on. All sorts of interesting things. And I thought I'd just share a vignette really briefly of the last issue in terms of someone who guarantees a loan for someone else. And when you're responsible to be a guarantor and when you're not, that if you see someone in the marketplace strangling someone else to get their money from this person, then you can say, I'll guarantee his loan, just let him go. Then you don't have to pay it. You're just saving the guy's life. So that's one kind of interesting aspect with where it ended. Okay, we'll go around the table and or around the study group and see what you think about these. Flores, you're going to be first, and Fran, you're going to be next. I hope you got these a few days ago, so you got a chance to look at them.
Yes, the latter bit is a bit difficult for me to think too deeply, but the first half is much better about the vessel containing either old or new wine. And I think it's what you said earlier. The older I get, and I'm so glad that I'm receptive to, I'm fortunate enough to have grandchildren, and I see that I learn a great deal from them because they look at it, as it says earlier, like paper that hasn't been written on. So they look at the same situation with all, without the doubts or with all the analytical things that I might think about it. So I think one can learn from the young, and also we're living in a technological age where they know so much more, and that's also learning. It may not be religious, but it's also learning about to make life easier. As I'm always surprised when my children come out with something that's really very good. And I think I've lived longer than them and I never saw it. A few years ago, I was in a state and I spoke to my daughter and I was telling her, she said to me, you know, Mummy, it's our expectations that always disappoint us. And I thought, I'd never thought of that. We expect have someone to be how we think, or we're looking forward to a holiday and we got all the CV was all there. And you get there and it hasn't married up with your expectations. And after she said that, I realized when I'm disappointed, yes, it's only my expectation. It isn't that anything's changed. It's just that. So I think that's also this American writer that I've discovered, James McBride. He was so influenced by his mother, and he was black, she was white, and he came home. He was 9 years old, and he said at school they told me I'm black, and he said you're white. What color is God? And she said to him, the color of water. And what a lovely, we learn so much, from everywhere. I think it's a case of not being arrogant or thinking that one knows everything. I think that's where humility comes in. Yes, you might know whatever's your job, your profession, or something, but there's always more learning. And especially from people who don't come from that mold, because you're conditioned. There was a period of time when I read biographies of famous people who are alone, like Einstein and all the others. And I thought how Einstein said he was very pleased he never went to university because he was able to open his mind. He was in Basel and he would get all the little things that people would bring and he would help them. And he thought that was a huge learning thing. I can't remember all the other historians that I read. And they just had inquiring minds. They didn't assume that they knew it all. And I think that's the blockage. I think I've been talking too much, so I better stop.
Well, that's great. And we'll all aim for having inquiring minds. That's a great expression. That's great. Fran, and then Michael, you're up.
Okay, I also got stuck on this, whether you'd like to study with someone younger, your age, or older. And it ties into what Elisha, the son of Avuya, said about fresh paper and erased paper. And I don't think this was intended, but it's something that occurred to me. Fresh paper has a very hard, smooth surface, and you can write on it, but what you write may not sink in because it can stay on the surface. But erased paper, you rub off this harsh surface on the top, and it gets a little maybe pulpy, so that whatever you write on, it sinks into it. And I'm thinking also of somebody who is older and who's erased the paper, who has gone through so many different types of learning and come to all kinds of different conclusions. And this shows a kind of growth that they have all this stuff behind them, and yet they can come to something entirely new. And so that's just the way I saw those things. I think the one thing about studying from young people, and I think Flora said this also, somehow the truth has not been taught out of them yet. Because unfortunately, education, and I use the word in quotes, can teach you not to think, can teach you not to see, can teach you to be afraid to pursue your own ideas and come to your own conclusions. And it narrows your focus. So I think young people haven't gotten there yet. But on the other hand, I think maybe just in our society, old people have a lot to offer. They really have learned a lot just from experience, as well as the opportunity to study. And I think that old people aren't valued. And I think that in our society, people brush them aside and don't go to them for learning and for advice and for ideas.
Okay, well, here for old people. I like that. Terrific. Michael.
I think both serve a purpose. One, you need an older teacher who's gone through a great deal of experience to teach you. But yet, at the same point, the younger person gives you a new way of looking at it. And it's rare that some of your teachers have both ways of doing things. One of my professors, and I'm not going to mention his name, he came up with a theory, and everybody thought he was crazy because he came up with it early in his career and only proved that he was right 40 years later because he lived long enough. But you can learn from both parties, but you need a foundation. And that's frequently what the older person can give you. But then you need to have a new way of viewing things, ways that may not have been available to the older person. I worked for a scholar who was in her 90s, and her final work, she gave you everything that the scholars knew before her. And then some of these, quote, snot noses ripped her apart because, oh, you should have thought of this, you should have thought of that, much of which wasn't even valid because they did not have the foundation on which to build their thoughts.
All right, well, good point is that you have to have that foundation and that we have to be patient because some brilliant ideas take a long time until they're accepted, if they're accepted. And it can take a lot of work to continue promoting an idea or a concept or a new medical device or a new theory until people accept it. That's
Because
great.
I just saw of Jules Verne, what
Yes.
he wrote about in the late 1800s, a boat going under the water, the
Yeah.
Nautilus.
Pretty
I think it's
amazing.
crazy, but he thought based on everything else.
Yeah. He, Da Vinci, there have been a lot of the
Da Vinci
greatest thinkers are
also.
recognized long after their time. It's a really good point. Nathan and then Gershom.
I guess I may be a bit repetitive because I'm probably going to focus also on, do you like to study from someone much younger, your age, or older? And I don't think I really have a preference. I think you never stop learning. And, it depends on what you're studying. I mean, maybe if you're studying Torah, you like to have somebody who's got more experience with Torah. But even when you're talking to younger people, especially the grandchild or sometimes it's some of the students when I do the student English tutoring. Sometimes just questions that they ask is a way of they make you think of something a little bit differently and have a different perspective. So there's advantages and disadvantages of studying with everybody. Whether it's a contemporary, as you get older, obviously with a contemporary or sometimes when you get older, most of the people you're studying with are younger.
Well, you make a good point that more experience with the same material can change, can add. I just told an 8-year-old today the brief story of a grandparent teaching his grandchild and asking what she studied in Torah this week, and she says, "Come on, it's the same thing I studied last year. It's Joseph got sold into Egypt this week, and it's the same." And the grandfather says, "Yeah, it's the same, but you're not the same as you were last year. So let's hear how you hear it this year." So yes, the more experience coming up against or coming to experience the Torah knowledge again and again, we grow, and the person who's teaching us hopefully has been through this material a number of times to show us or to help us see the different aspects of that material. Go ahead, Gail, show me, then we got you up, Liz.
so this whole issue of learning from people reminds me of a discussion we had somewhere in the past uh, about teaching people. And I don't remember whether I said it or somebody else said it, but there was a comment about learning from our students a great deal. And part of what we learn from our students is how well we do or do not understand something. So that's something I think in some ways we're more likely to to learn from people younger than we are in one way or another. Um, I, I want to take an opportunity also just to throw in something that I've been meaning to throw in for a couple of weeks. One of the other study groups I participate in is from a good friend of Bridges for Hope, Rabbi Neil Gold, who has started doing a weekly Torah lesson, which will begin in an hour and 45 minutes. I think I got into it because we were all invited to join. So I just want to put that out there. If people want to, they can join that and learn. Rabbi Gold is younger than I am. I'm not quite sure how much younger, but one thing that I find in him is great enthusiasm. And that's something that in some ways younger people may be more adept at than older teachers who have gone through the material so many times, even though it's looked at from a fresh perspective each time. It's often that people are not as lively in their teaching method. So in that sense, I do enjoy learning from younger people as well as older people. There aren't that many older people left teaching as I go year by year, so the choices are going to get more limited. And I think I'll stop there at the moment.
Okay, well, thank you for following up about Rabbi Neil Gold. He's come to Israel a number of times. He's been a scholar in residence at the Netanya congregation, excuse me, and has been teaching online and has a class a lot like ours, but dealing with different subjects. And it's free and available. And if you miss it, there's a recording of it. And he is very enthusiastic, which makes it really nice to hear him. So anyone can get in on that. And if anyone does not have his contact for his A Tree with Roots series, then I'm sure Edgar can share the link to that, and you can get on with that. Okay, a lot about the teachers. Liz, maybe you could talk just a little bit about the judgment concept here, that we don't choose to be born, and we don't choose or get to decide whether we're going to be judged, but we will be. How do you feel about that?
Just a second. Well, it's interesting that you bring up this judging thing, because with the next tractate starting with the whole thing on the judges, and had a preview of it today on, how many judges, and it's certainly a current concept here in Israel that we're hearing about daily, that I don't understand the whole judicial system that they have here. But your timing was good about that. And I was going to say regarding today's subject that just about everybody I'm learning from is younger than me and knows more than me. And so I really appreciate it. But what fascinates me is when my oldest grandson, who is 6.5 at this point, tells me something with such enthusiasm that he learned, at his little yeshiva school. that amazes me because he's at the age where he's just soaking it up. And I wish, I had had that kind of education when I was younger, but at the same time, he's always surprised when he finds out that the rest of us already knew that. So, there's both sides, as they say, to the coin, and I try to learn from wherever I can and from whomever is available to teach things. And it's nice that we feel that we're never too old. Our paper not only is erased, it's not crumbled up yet, that we can learn.
Well, in terms of judging, I was going to say again that here you were given a nice honor for your work, and that's a nice judgment which lasts, and I hope inspires other people to do nice things, whether they get recognized in our lifetime or afterwards.
But just, I
yes.
wanted to say that it's really, for me, a little embarrassing to be awarded that way because, well, I'm part of a whole lot of people who are doing this, but it's something that started as part of my love of volunteering and Judaism and finding something. Here in Netanya, there's not a lot that people can volunteer at, and there's a whole list of, every day I see places that need volunteers for agriculture, for donation centers, making meals, but most of them are centered around, you have to be at Tel Aviv or Jerusalem to pick up at 6 a.m. And there's not a lot. And when I found out about the tzitzit tying and I could go to Tel Aviv, I did it, but I only did it once. And I said, there's no reason why we can't do this in Netanya. And the friend that was with me agreed. And so she's my co-chair with this. And it just pleases me to see all these people who come. We've had about 20 people or so that come every week. Some, repeat, some new. And it's just makes me feel good to see that this idea I had was a good one, as opposed to, well, we started this and nobody showed up. But I don't do well with, like getting an award or things like that.
That's fine. Too much running after honor, as it says here, will take you out of the world. But receiving the honor is inspiring to other people. And I love that idea that you just came up with, how in this case, a grandchild, but anyone learns something and is just so surprised that everyone else seemed to know it already. And yet it's kind of an eye opener when we learn something and we see that, everyone has been working on that basis until now. And
I was going to say, I'm a good example of that, Jesse, because I was at my son's house and my son, it was, Erev Shabbat, and we were having early Kiddush with the kids. And my son said to me, Mom, do you want to do the Kiddush? So I said, sure. And I sang the Kiddush, and my little grandson looked at me like, how did you know that? You haven't been here Friday night with us. How did you know that? Yes. And I had to say to him, who do you think taught it to your daddy?
Yes. Well, it's wonderful, particularly the Kiddush is one of those examples that it's really exciting how Judaism goes across the world, and wherever you go, it seems to be just about exactly the same Kiddush, and it makes you feel a part of something really big. Mom and Ted, you're up. You're going to try and unmute yourself. And as retired teachers, you may have something to feel about different times of teaching, or you may want to talk about the judgments here that are discussed.
Well, when you said before, we don't choose to when we're born, and we don't choose when we die. That's quite true. And my thoughts about that, I was born as after my mother had a miscarriage, and the doctor said, well, you should try again. And so I feel that I was like an extra kind of gift, and very grateful all the time that I was born, because I've always enjoyed and learned and enjoyed learning, and I still enjoy learning, and I'm getting up there in the numbers, and I am okay with that. I feel that I've done my share, tried to make the world a better world, and hope that that when I leave a better world for the younger generation. And I'm ready to learn from anyone who can teach me something that that registers, that I can, and I do learn a lot all the time from my husband. I feel that Ted is an eternal teacher and very excellent values, and I appreciate that.
Well, that's great. Ted, I think she's called on you here.
Well, I think I learn from Beverly every moment. And at the moment, I'm speechless. So and I like listening rather than pontificating.
I'm debating whether to let you off the hook or if I'm going to press the button one more time to hear about your feeling about how we're judged after we're not here anymore.
Oh, we judged.
Ted?
I'm sorry. Jesse, one of my problems is that I hear people loud enough, but because of my hearing disability, which becomes more severe almost on a daily basis, I miss much of what people say. So I have to, I guess, apologize for not being able to respond so well. And
that's okay. That's fine. I think all of us here in this group and elsewhere are very impressed that the two of you are so mifargen and supportive of each other, and there's something that everybody here can learn from that, and it's really nice to see. And I'll end with the prayer for being thankful for having the Torah and getting to study the Torah. Yes.
Kirsten has to stand up.
Can I
Go
just
ahead,
add one
Yosef.
thing?
Sorry.
That's okay. This is actually for you, Liz, that I can appreciate that you're not thrilled with getting awards in a sense, but just if it helps you any, to think of it as it accomplishes a couple of things that help what you're doing. Number one, it advertises your project that much more to people, and it may inspire people to think of ideas that are not the same ideas that you have, but that may help people. So even if you don't get the great joy out of getting it, maybe you can appreciate some that it still does some good that you get the awards. Hope that helps a little.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's get to our prayer for the Torah. Anyone who wants can unmute themselves or not, and can say in their heart if they want. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Thank you, God, for the commandments, including that to study and deal with Torah. So have a good Shabbat. And next week there will be a lesson led by the rabbi that will deal with Hanukkah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Wishing everyone a very happy Hanukkah and
We
peaceful.
having a series of Hanukkah celebrations everywhere. I'm going to make a list, and you can participate in any of the celebrations. And instead of a regular class, we're going to have a special class for Hanukkah.
Very good.
Next week.
Shalom lekulam. Litrat.
Bye-bye.
תודה רבה, שבת שלום.
Bye bye. Litrat. Bye bye.
Shabbat shalom.
Right.